My memory at 84 years of age is not what it used to be, but one of my earliest recollections of Edward Thomas is happily of decisive clarity. The occasion was, I think, during a few days of quietude, just before we left Lydd for France, and being off duty myself, it occurred to me that I might go down to where he was at the Battery to keep him company. So far as I can recall, there was as yet no special intimacy between us, and I had a certain reticence in invading what might well be for him a precious moment of solitude. We must, of course, have already introduced ourselves to each other and talked literature, but that was all. When afterwards someone told me that he had expressed great pleasure in this approach of mine to him, it gave me the keenest delight. In searching letters of the men at the front, I had a good opportunity of gauging the profound respect with which he was regarded by them. This is a point where there is no need to distrust my memory, nor, let it be said, the sincerity of what was written. I can clearly remember the look of one of the pages in a man's letter home, and, verbatim, certain words that the writer used in which respect and admiration were manifest. This was indeed a man. It is important to note.
Now it is very unusual for a week to go by without there being some inquiry for poems to be used in anthologies or information. We get a lot of students asking for information for their thesis, but we have inquiries from England, of course, the States, India, Africa, New Zealand and Australia for poems to be used in anthologies, both for school children and for adult students, which is very heartening indeed.
But not a great deal of interest in the prose?
No, hardly ever. And this ties up with my own childhood.
Oh, he's a very fine fellow. Very fine. Oh, yes, he wasn't our type at all then, you see. We were from industrial villages, of course, you see, and used to the rough and tumble life of it. But he was very refined.
It was a distinct disadvantage to be the daughter of a poet, because people just didn't know what you were talking about when they asked what one's father did. He was a poet, and he was dead, which was very unusual for my contemporaries at school, as he was joined up so late in life, comparatively, so that nobody else had had their father or brothers killed in the war. And so this was a distinct disadvantage not to have a father and to have had him a poet. And I was really rather ashamed of this, because the teachers, some of whom had heard of him, expected me to be very good at English, and I took rather a dim view of this. I couldn't see quite why I should be expected to be. And so altogether I kept quiet about it if I possibly could. And also in one's early life, enthusiasts were apt to introduce one as Edward Thomas's daughter, and one dreaded the sort of blank look that would come over their faces, and you wished to heaven they wouldn't do that, you know.
You wanted to give out the cards saying who he was, so that they would... And as a child, of course, the child has got great hope in
Yes.
his life and can't look forward to it.
Yes. And such terrific faith that one's parents are there for always.
Yes.
Well, then one morning we were walking along together and passing under the wild cherry trees with all the petals blown onto the lane, because they never last very long, and I said to my father, someone's had a wedding, and he wrote the cherry trees, which I only realised a long time afterwards. I remembered the wedding because I was interested in weddings being a little girl, and I only realised a long time afterwards that he wrote this after my little remark. The cherry trees bend over and are shedding on the old road where all that passed are dead, their petals strewing the grass as for a wedding this early May morn when there is none to wed.
Not ever censorious. Oh dear me, no, not ever. Or dogmatist. He had, when I say he had no principles or no theories, he acted spontaneously from his heart always. He hadn't any preconceived notions. Behaviour, he was always himself, always exactly the same wherever he was.
Because it was all home pure stuff in our house, bacon and everything, you see. And my mother used to make homemade buns, currant buns, you know, about 6 inches diameter. And whenever he went on his travels, mother used to ask him in Welsh, beth maen nhw chi eddi, ydw i gyda chi? You are currant buns here and a lump of cheese and I'll be quite happy. He'd always talked about birds, plants, trees. We'd sit down and he'd see a bird flying and he'd ask me, what bird is that now, Thomas? Well, I didn't bother about birds, is he that age? I don't know much. Oh, that's a kestrel, he said. He knew every bird on the wing, you know.
And what about his attitude to flowers and things like that?
Oh, very delicate. Oh, he treated flowers very delicate. If he could walk through the country, he wouldn't step on a single flower, you know.
You've seen photographs of him, I expect, that have been published.
Yes.
Have you seen the one in the British Museum, in the Cardiff Museum, in the Welsh?
Lino cut.
Lino cut.
Yes, I've seen that.
Now, does this remind you of him at all?
Yes, it's the image of him. It's the image of him. And my daughter says, Daddy, he's like you, isn't he?
What about his dress? And he was a great walker. What kind of clothes did he wear?
Oh, well, he wore clothes for the occasion, you see. Tweed, heavy tweed coats, and heavy tweed trousers, but not of the same pattern. He usually had fawn trousers and a darker coat. Yes.
And any...
He had the poacher's pockets inside. Oh, I was amused with his poacher's pockets then.
What did he have in these books, or
He had a map. Well, I travelled by map, of course. And he had some notebooks. And he carried his lunch, of course.
a compass, I expect?
And a compass, yes.
He was a great cross-country walker.
Oh, cross-country, yes. If you could see a dotted line on a 6-inch map, he'd walk it because he had right away for that.
Yeah.
He was very, very, very hurt, and I'm sure, when he saw me black, you know. He came down one afternoon and I was just come home from the colliery and my face was black. And he said, why is your face black, Thomas? Oh, well, I've started in the colliery, Edwin, I said, and I intend making mining a career. Oh, he said, that's all.
My husband, before we were engaged, lent me a book, Horace Oratelli, the first one, because there was a later edition, with more added later on. And I was absolutely fascinated by it. And he was very pleased that I liked it and said that that the author was sometimes in London and he'd arrange for a meeting. So he got Sir William Hamilton Fyfe, who died the other day. At that time he was a don at Merton, and he was engaged to be married. And he invited him and his fiancée and me to a little dinner in Soho, one of those little good and cheap restaurants that used to exist in those days. We had a very pleasant evening, most delightful man to look at, who spoke very little. And Dolly and I didn't speak very much either, we just listened to the men. And he certainly made a very delightful impression. He had a very charming voice and manner. And after that I don't think I saw him again until we were engaged. And then my husband asked us to meet at another little restaurant, the Breeze, I think it was this time. And I suddenly discovered that while we were waiting for Thomas to arrive, my husband was nervous, which was most unusual.
Nervous for you now?
Nervous. He was in a state of tension. And I wondered what it was all about. And he suddenly explained that he did so hope that everything would go all right because Thomas was very shy, and I must remember that he was very shy.
I think I'd like to read two poems that are the same in length and similar in metric. There's a beautiful poem, The Clouds That Are So Light.
Oh, yes.
It shows lovely quality.